Hello, in this video we're going to continue to talk about file inputs and outputs. So whenever we're dealing with files, many things can go wrong because it's another thing that we have to deal with. So the most common problem is trying to open a file that actually does not exist. So for example, if I mistype the name of the file and then I try to run it, then I'll get a file not found exception. Okay, and it crash our program. So crashing the program is never desirable. So we know how to deal with exceptions. We just have to put this in a try block, and then we are going to say except. We want to handle exceptions. Now we can just handle file not found error. But like I said, even though this is the most common exception, there may be others. So, and we might not even know what they are. So instead of just handle a specific exception, I'll handle all sorts of exceptions. And most of the time, we probably just want to print out what the error is. So that's what I'll do. So now if I run this, my program did not crash, but I can report by printing to the console that I run into an error that the name of the file does not exist. Okay. Let's see what else. Okay. Like I said, there could be many other type of errors in file I/O, such as another very common one is some sort of I/O error, but these are not very common in terms of a local file system. So we're not going to further investigate them in this class. Now, so far we've been reading from a file. We can also write to a file, right? Just like when we said at the beginning, we like a variable, we can read from a variable, but we can also write to a variable. Now, so in order to write to a file, we do something very, very similar. And the main difference is in terms of open. Previously, when we open, we just give it a file name, but by default, that is reading from a file. If we want to write, we have to say, in quotes, W. Okay, and this is actually what's called the mode parameter. So there's a reading mode, there's a writing mode. And then the next line of code is, okay, so we have a file now that we can write to, and we can dereference the file and call the write method on that file object. And we can write basically kind of, any kind of string to it. So I'm writing hello world, it's a good day to learn file IO in Python, etc. And then the rest of the thing is still the same, right? It's still just the exception handling in case there's problem writing to the file. Okay, so that's really that. So let's run it. It's finished, and as you can see, a new file just popped up. It's called new.txt. Now, if you look at this, well, okay, well, we wrote 2 lines, but they are all in 1 line. Okay, and the reason for that is, even though this f.write and then a message or a string, it kind of looks like a print. But unlike print, which automatically by default insert a new line at the end of the string of every print statement, write writes exactly what the string is. So if you want to insert a new line, you have to put a new line explicitly. Okay, so let's run this again. We now got new.txt. Now we have new lines. All right. Okay, moving on. So now that we've learned both to read a file and write a file. So can you write a few lines of code to open a file, read all of its content, and then write all of its content back to another file? Okay, so this is just kind of like copying. And I'm going to give you a hint how to do this. And that is using the keyword with. We've already seen a with to open one file, but you can actually give with multiple files. So here, the with is open poem.txt to read. So that's the input file. And then I open a copy of poem.txt that's write for writing. So that's an output file. So now we have two files, and basically you just have to read from the in file and write to the out file. So pause the video, give that a try. Okay, and the answer would look like, let's see, do I have it? I don't have, oh, I do have copy. There we go. So basically, once you have the input in file and out file, I can just read every line from the in file and then I write to that out file. Okay, so let's run this. Okay, and you can see immediately there is a copy of the poem.txt, and it's exactly what poem.txt is. Okay, so I believe that is the end. Yeah, well, not quite the end. Just one more thing that I want to mention is that, so file I/O, we just talk about the basics. Now, it can get very complicated because, for example, we just read and write a text file. Well, not all files are text files. There are binary files. And then when we create a file, sometimes maybe we don't want to create a file if the file is already exists. And sometimes if the file already exists, instead of replacing the content of the file, we might want to do append. And then there are more complicated ways to read the file, right? Instead of reading line by line, maybe we want to read 100 characters at a time, or 1,000 bytes at a time, things like that. So yes, it can get very complicated, but hopefully now that you have the basic, if you need something more elaborate, you can read more about it on your own. There are many resources on the web. The most authoritative resources are from the official Python documentation. It has a tutorial for inputs and outputs, and then it has a very detailed documentation on all the other different ways you can open a file. All right, so yeah, that is the end for the file I/O video.